Hello everyone, I'm Naketa West, manager of the Victoria Mutual Foundation, and welcome to another episode of Parenting with the VM Foundation. May is Child's Month, but it's also Mental Health Awareness Month. And in this episode, we want to discuss the mental health of our children. And to help me with this discussion, we have with us Mrs. Kellie-Anne Campbell, an associate school psychologist with Caribbean Tots to Teens. Thank you so much for being here. Now, when we talk about the mental health of our children, what exactly do we mean?
Yes, so again, thank you for having me here. Mental health. So we talk about physical health all the time, but mental health has to do with our psychological or social or emotional well-being. And I think what a lot of us don't realize and remember is that this impacts not just how we think and how we feel, but how we act. Right? And so mental health is not just for adults. We have to remember that children become adults. And so when we talk about mental health, it's important to focus on children's mental health as well.
Okay. And what are signs of mental health challenges in our children? And as parents, how do we identify those signs?
Yes. So typically, when you go to the pediatrician, you take out your child health passport.
Yes.
And, the doctor will look at the child's milestones and so on. As parents, we know that there are different developmental milestones, different benchmarks then that we use to say that, our child is at this stage versus that stage and developing. And so when we think about the mental health of our children, there are particular milestones that they'll go through as well. So, the very young children, in terms of they're not able to speak and express themselves as much. So they may have, irritability, they may cry a lot, they may fuss a lot over things because they don't have the verbal capacity to be able to express what they're feeling. But as our children get older, definitely we're hoping and expecting that they're able to, for the most part, express how they're feeling verbally. And of course, as they get into adolescence and adulthood, you should see that progression. What will happen sometimes, though, depending on if children are impacted in different ways negatively by traumatic incidents, and that is something that we need to realize as parents, that what our children are going through now with COVID-19 is a form of trauma, even for us as adults, but much less for them. And so as parents, we're looking out for some of those changes in our children's behavior. So we may realize that, our child is more irritable than usual. They're not talking as much. They've lost interest completely in a lot of the things that they used to love. So I know I'll use an example from my own experience with my daughter. I realized that she kind of started to lose interest in things like gymnastics or dancing even, things that she loved to do, and not interest fully. But she didn't want to have to do the online classes and, just the disruption. And I guess it wasn't natural for her. So there were different changes that I was noticing. But even for teenagers, you may notice that they shut down. They may withdraw. They don't want to talk. Even though for some teenagers, that's normal.
That's what I was thinking.
Yes.
Because, how do we really and truly distinguish
Yes.
between or differentiate
Yes.
The normal or natural development things that we see versus mental health problems?
Yes. Many times what we will say as psychologists is that you will see behaviors that are over and beyond what you would expect. And so, as parents, you have to pay attention to those changes in behavior very clearly. So especially, for instance, in some of our children, you may see regression in behavior. So let's say 5 years ago, they used to suck their finger or they used to bite their nails a lot. And you may see even during this time that some of those behaviors start coming back. You have some children who may even start wetting the bed again. They may get up a lot during the middle of the night to want to sleep with you or seeking comfort a lot and so on. You and I were talking before, Naketa, and I was telling you that somebody shared an article on social media the other day about the fact that after all of this, we may see things like clinginess and even separation anxiety becoming an issue in some of our children because of the experience that they've had having it was such a quick transition that they had to make, from when schools closed and then online schooling and so on. So it's really been very tuned in to significant changes in behavior that we're seeing in our children.
So, seeing things as regression or regression in behavior as well as intensifying
Yes,
behavior
that's right.
are signs
That's
of
right.
Possible mental health challenges.
Yes,
And how
definitely.
would COVID-19, I know you kind of touched on it, but I'd love for you to go into it a little bit more because even, my daughter, she's not interacting with her friends right now. Everything is online. She has to deal with parents as her teachers. That's a challenge because she's used to her teachers having probably a different demeanor than her parents. But how could this COVID-19 situation and the homeschooling situation really and truly affect our children and their mental health as they go through, the rest of the school term and beyond?
Yeah. So kind of long-term effects.
Right.
Yes. One of the big things that I know, even as psychologists, so, myself and some of my teammates and other colleagues have been talking about is the possible rise in anxiety. So I know of a young girl who has started to wash her hands so much that her skin has actually started to break. And I mean, she kind of had some of these anxiety tendencies before, but you're seeing it even more prominent now.
So like intensified.
Exactly. So that is one of the things that we really have to be looking out for with our children as we even go outside of this. But also the social impact. For many of our children, school is a safe place. So we even think of our children as well who are athletes, right? Where they're so accustomed to being active, to being in training, to have their peers and their coaches and their teachers, and even children who we know are probably in situations in their homes and in their communities where they're being abused, where they're being mistreated. And school was always that place that they were able to look forward to, almost as an escape. They had people to talk to. They have their friends. They have their social groups, different clubs that they're involved in. There's so many things that have been disrupted in their lives now. And so we have to be paying very close attention to how the changes that they've gone through now may impact them long term as we come out of this, the transition back to school. That is something that I don't know if a lot of us have been thinking about. We're thinking right now about, oh my gosh, they're out of school and we're trying to deal with them transitioning, not being in school. But that transition back to the school environment is something that we're really going to need to be thinking about. A lot of our children who have diagnosed problems already, ADHD, challenges with attention and hyperactivity, how are they now going to transition back into the physical space of school? Having to sit through classes and that kind of thing, not having, for some children, the online virtual thing works because, they're into technology and so on. But then back now into being in the physical classroom, even for teachers, it stretched them a lot. So we're hoping that some of these strategies that they've learned now, they'll still be able to transition back when we hopefully go back to school in September. But we really have to be paying attention to how some of the challenges that our children are facing now may actually impact them long term.
So earlier you spoke about the social impact of our children and what they may be facing right now, not interacting with their friends. But I really wanted to hear a little bit more because, the school setting, how that is different from what is happening at home and how they may see their parents or their teachers in the future. So tell us a little bit about what that may look like and how that can cause some different, behavioral or emotional challenges.
Well, what you may find, and again, as human beings, we're so different, right? So we all may respond to situations differently. So you may have the child who was very introverted at school. They may actually be more comfortable online, funny enough, because they don't feel as watched, I guess, by their peers. And they're in their home environment, so they may feel a little more relaxed and to be themselves, and they may not feel as pressured in terms of, I finished my work last and somebody else finished already and that kind of thing. So you may actually find that for some children it may work. For others though, who are more extroverted and who need to be around people, who need their friends around them, they may struggle quite a bit with being at home, with not having their friends to almost feed off of, during the learning process and so on.
Especially competitive children.
Yes, definitely. Definitely, especially them who feed off of, oh, okay, so that person has my daughter is one of those. So I know for her, she'll be online sometimes and she's trying to pick up on
who's finished first?
Yes, and who has done something, and the teacher and online setting to those children who want to be heard and they like to be heard and they like to be called on. Because of how Zoom or whichever platform the teacher is using, the teacher may not be able to see everybody. So you start having these self-esteem issues because teacher didn't call on me today and I had so much to say and I wasn't able to say it. Because remember, with the online setting, you may have time restrictions and it's just very different. It's not as natural. You don't have the teacher walking around touching you on your head or tapping your shoulder, and just that face-to-face interaction, that dynamic. You can't replicate that online. So it's really challenging for a lot of our children having to make that transition. Yes.
And how can mental health issues generally, as well as what's happening or what could be an impact of COVID-19 be seen as adults or manifest as when we
Okay. So I touched on anxiety earlier. I would say that is probably the biggest thing. So coming out of this, you may have children who may end up becoming very hypersensitive to their environment, hypersensitive to people touching them, to people probably speaking to them, because in the back of their heads, oh no, I may get sick. Or even with their parents, with their peers, with adults and so on, they may feel as if they do certain things, they may make the person sick. So you may have things like obsessive compulsive disorder, starting to manifest in different ways. We don't want to go overboard and start really doing diagnosis of these things, but we're saying that there are the symptoms and behaviors that may end up developing over time coming out of this crisis, because we end up becoming very hypersensitive, as I said before, to our environment and to people and different things happening around us. This thing of, oh no, calamity. One day we're okay, the next day we may have to shut down school because you hear that somebody has gotten sick. So, all of these, just the uncertainty of everything is something that we really have to be careful about, and watch our children coming out of this whole crisis, of some of these behaviors that we may be seeing. We don't talk much about it, but even sadness, depression, right? Again, yes, frustration. Again, coming out of the whole thing of not being able to control our situation. One thing I really, really, really want to touch on, though, Naketa, is the children who have disabilities, or children who have diagnosed disabilities. So our children who are on the autism spectrum. Routines have changed significantly for them. So even for parents, one of the things that we want to encourage them to do, as much as is possible, try to stick to routines at home.
Because we know that routine is really what helps them to get
That's right. Any child, whether the child has a disability or not, routines are there. Routines make children feel safe. They know that at this time, when they get up in the mornings, this is what is going to happen and this is what their day will look like. As much as possible, we want to try and maintain that for them.
That's such an interesting thing because, we have a routine. I have a daughter and we have a routine at home. But, I noticed that sometimes she may get up from the seat and take breaks because she's tired of sitting down. And, sometimes you might look at it, I wonder if she's just a little, uncomfortable or, not wanting to think of it too serious. But then you realize at school they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to move and interact so much more than if they're at home sitting in front of Zoom.
Something as simple as you need a ruler or an eraser from a friend across the classroom. You get up and you go for it, right? The teacher may tell you to come to her desk to do something. So you may be working, but then you're getting up, you're going to your teacher's desk, you're getting up to throw away the sharpener, the things from the pencil when you sharpen the pencil. I mean, there's so many different things that you're doing. You know, the classroom. There's a lot going on during the school day, other than just sitting in front of your teacher. Because I'll tell you, it's only probably a couple of hours of the school day that the children are actively sitting in front of their teacher. They have PE, they have music, they have this going on, they have that going on. You know, they may be practicing for, right now, the children will be practicing for prize giving. That's true. You know, all of these are the things that we don't think about, you know, that they are missing out on because they're not in the school setting.
And how that really and truly could affect them because they're not able to engage in other activities.
Yes, and so I want to say it again, Naketa, that one of the things that we need to be thinking about as parents now as well is having that discussion about what school is going to be like when we go back.
Yes.
Starting that discussion now, you know.
But I don't think we know either, so we
don't. But in terms of, you know, that it's not going to be that you're just going to be sitting all day anymore. You won't be in front of a screen, a computer screen anymore. You'll be back in your classroom. You know, there'll be changes for sure. We know there'll be different things that will have to be put in place.
Maybe some social distancing.
Exactly. So, you know, starting to start that conversation about what may it look like.
And as you say, starting the conversation. If we have parents and they're seeing some of these behaviors or emotional challenges in our children right now, how do we have those conversations with our children?
One of the things that I think we need to be very clear about is that as parents, we shouldn't be afraid to talk to our children about how they're feeling. And so that's why, as I say, starting the conversation, talk to your children. How was class today? It was frustrating. You looked a little bit upset. So I know I have to have those talks and check-ins with my daughter every now and again because she gets very frustrated by the technology.
Yes, when it's not working.
The glitching and my teacher wasn't hearing me. And so literally I'm having to teach her how to do things like breathe. Just breathe deep, take some deep breaths, count to 10. Do activities like painting and, you know, just talking to your kids about what they are feeling. Have them draw pictures. You know, some children are not big talkers, and that's okay. So how else do you get them to express themselves? You know, give them a journal and say, this is your book to write in about your COVID-19 experience. You know, so they're having some way, shape or form of processing what they are experiencing and what they're feeling. You know, as a parent though, if you are truly concerned that the behaviors that you're seeing, your child is more angry than usual, highly irritable, they're sleeping more than usual, or they're eating more than usual, or eating less, or sleeping less, you're seeing certain behaviors that you're really, really concerned that, no, this is too much, reach out. So I know you will mention that later on about the parenting hotline. But there are places like Caribbean Talks Teens where parents are able to reach out to say, you know, hey, I'm not sure what is happening. Can we do a consultation? Places like Family Life Ministries. And even reaching out to the Ministry of Education and so on, just to get help, seek help.
And where schools have their guidance counselors.
Exactly.
Right, because I think that's important, you know, as parents, if we identify these challenges, really and truly, where do we get help? Where do we find support? Is there any online resources that you can direct us to as well?
There is a great website. I can't remember the exact website now, but if you Google Big Life Journal.
Oh, yes, I know it.
Yes, that's a good one. Yes. They have a lot of free printables and free resources to just help your children work through things like being mindful, you know, identifying how I'm feeling, what my emotion is, and what I can do. Coping mechanisms. That's a good one, I think, for children, pretty much from as young as 2, 3, right up to adolescence. So that's a good one. That one really stands out.
Right. I see it and I use it so much with my daughter. And I ask primarily because, you know, our children are going through different development stages still. That's natural, as well as this new challenge, and just how do we support them through this time? And so even as children, how do they find, you know, or identify triggers within themselves, and how do they deal with them?
So that again comes back to having those discussions with our children and training them to not be afraid of their emotions. If I am upset, I am upset. But what I have this, I can't remember where I heard it from, but there is it's something that I will tell to teachers and parents about a lot. Responding to situations as opposed to reacting.
Yes.
And there's a subtle difference between the two. Reacting is almost like you think of a knee-jerk reaction, right? Where somebody hits you, exactly, and you just react instantaneously, as opposed to responding really comes to being more mindful, a little more conscious and aware of how, if something happens to me, what thought process do I go through before I actually respond to the situation. So I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling upset, not just, and you don't just leave it there. Why? What is actually causing me to feel this way? Do I have control over it? No, I don't. Or yes, I have control of it. If I do have control, what can I do? What are some of the coping mechanisms? And so I think as parents, our children are going to become adults, right?
Yes.
And you've asked that a couple of times. What will be the impact now? And I think it's a prime time for us to teach our children coping mechanisms.
So I know you mentioned breathing.
Yes.
And writing in journals
Yes.
for kids who can or have a difficulty expressing themselves.
Right.
But is there anything else that you can help our children themselves to utilize, and our parents to help those their children to utilize so that they can maneuver and navigate this experience really well?
Again, for children who are probably very active and like going outside and so on, going into nature, doing gardening, going outside and just running, skipping, finding a way to get out whatever frustration that you're feeling or whatever anxiety that you're feeling. But really just using different mechanisms to try to navigate, whatever stuff are pent up inside. So that is what I would really recommend. I mean, for children, our children really need us to guide them through that process.
Yes.
And so it's a matter, as I said, of teaching them how to acknowledge that they're feeling a particular way that is uncomfortable, but trying to face that discomfort and dealing with it, and not just leaving it alone and kind of brushing it under the rug. So I get from the parent side, you see certain things and you say, oh, they'll get over it. Or from even the child side, okay, mommy or daddy may get annoyed with me, so let me just try to leave it alone. No, invariably it will come back to the surface. And so it's really on both sides, acknowledging that, look, it's a hard time for everybody.
Yes.
It's not just the parents and adults who are going through it. The children are going through this experience too. And they feed off of our anxiety as well. So that is one big thing I would say. Be careful of the things that you expose the children to in terms of the news and the discussions that you have around them about, how many people are dying and how many people are sick.
Because you don't want to perpetuate.
You don't want to overexpose.
Yes.
You want them to be aware and conscious, but focus on the positive. What can I do to control the spread? What are the things that are within my control?
Right.
And kind of focus more on that as opposed to the negative things and as opposed to the things that are really bigger than us. So those are some of the things that we can really do to help them navigate.
One of the big things I think we also need to, as parents, need to be conscious of is making sure that how we're responding to our children and that we're conscious of it. We're at home and we're stressed as well, right? And we talk about the children kind of feeding off of our energy, how we are responding and reacting to whatever work pressures we have, whatever financial struggles we're going through. And one of the things we have to be very careful of is that we're not taking things out on them, so to speak. So, we're not accustomed during the school day to have to get up and make breakfast, and you have to make lunch, they have to make dinner, and then, and the day just goes, and depending on when the child if they have online classes or they have assignments to do, but you also have your work to do. You may have meetings, exactly. Again, it comes back to that whole thing of routine. How do you even create a routine and structure? Because then it's too timetables basically that you're working with. If you have more than one child, don't even talk about that, right? Because then I don't want mac and cheese, and who wants crackers, and who wants bun and cheese, and who wants hot dog, and, you know, and so it can become incredibly stressful. And so I know we're talking about mental health of our children, but as the parents as well, we have to pay attention to our own mental health. How are we finding those times during the day to just decompress? Self-care is going to be critical at a time like this. So we talk about how, you know, what our children go through now may impact them as adults. Yeah, that relationship between you and your child is something that we have to pay attention to, especially at a time like this. Because coming out of this, we want our children to remember and to know that they still can come to mommy and daddy for whatever their issues are, whatever they're facing, and that we're not going to react in this crazy kind of out of the way, you know, way, but that we're listening. We're truly listening to what it is that they're experiencing, what it is that they're feeling, and then responding in a conscious manner. Yes.
Wow, this has really been a rich conversation. Thank you so much, Kellie-Anne, for being here with us. And thank you for joining us for this episode of Parenting with the VM Foundation. Parents, if you need further assistance, the COVID-19 Parenting Support Helpline is available. We have partnered with the National Parenting Support Commission, UNICEF, and Fight for Peace International to provide this support for you. Just click on the link included in this post to get a list of the numbers. Also, if you have a topic that you'd like us to address, feel free to email us at vmfoundation@myvmgroup.com. I am Naketa West. Keep safe, keep sanitized, and happy parenting.